Scarlett stared at the well-dressed man standing before her. His words echoed in her head. "Amanda Black, you have been served," he said with a touch of sadness in his voice. A dead silence fell over the office, and for a moment it seemed to Scarlett that time had stopped. In her hand was the death sentence for a 5-year marriage. With a silent sob, she sank into her chair, clutching the papers. Gradually, the office began to stir. Stares, whispers, and disapproving murmurs arose. Suddenly, Scarlett heard the soft voice of her friend nearby. "Scarlett, come on. Quiet," Chloe said, taking her friend's arm and helping her stand. "Let's go to the conference room, away from these looks." The dark-haired 30-year-old woman led her friend away from the gaping colleagues. Those who witnessed the scene noticed how Scarlett had transformed in just a few minutes from a loud, flirty, cheerful blonde into a haggard woman. Some saw irony or a cause for jokes in this, others only pity. Most already suspected the reason for the divorce. "How? Me? I don't understand," Scarlett muttered. Everything was just starting to get better. She hugged herself, as if hoping to find some strength in the embrace. Chloe put her arms around her, trying to console her. "I don't know, darling," Chloe said softly. "Did Ethan say anything? Were there any hints at all that this would happen?" "On the contrary," Scarlett replied, gasping. "We were like newlyweds. I thought he was making up for lost time spent overseas." Chloe shivered subtly, but Scarlett noticed it. Scarlett mentally replayed the last 4 months of their marriage. Since Ethan returned from Afghanistan, their sex life had been incredible. Even better than after he returned from Iraq 2.5 years ago. He was so passionate and sensual. "My God," she thought, "I can barely walk half the time afterward." She smiled sadly, wiping away a tear. It was so hot and exciting. "I mean, after I got back from my business trip last week," Scarlett's smile grew a little warmer. "My God, Chloe, Ethan just wore me out. We did it so often that eventually I was begging him to stop." Scarlett's smile vanished when she saw her friend's questioning look. "No, nothing happened while I was on the trip. I told you it was over," she protested. Chloe nodded but didn't smile. "When was the last time Ethan just held you, just kissed you and touched you, dear? When was the last time he made love to you gently?" Scarlett sat in a daze, looking at Chloe questioningly. "What?" With a determined sigh, Chloe looked at her friend before continuing. "Scarlett," she asked directly, "did he make love to you, or was it just sex?" Scarlett covered her face with her hands and sobbed loudly. "But why? Why did he do this?" she thought, and then suddenly froze. No, he couldn't know, could he? Slowly raising her head, she realized with horror. "My God, Chloe," she whispered, "he knows. God, please no, please no." Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes as she embraced her weeping friend. She knew Ethan quite well, and if he truly knew, this was going to be awful. Ethan nodded, listening on his cell phone. "Thank you, sir," he finally said, hearing that the packages of photos and legal documents had been delivered to his wife. Hanging up, he switched his attention to the laptop. With a single click, he initiated a process that would forever change his unfaithful wife's life. She will remember this for the rest of her life, he thought, picking up the receiver and dialing a number. "Hello, Human Resources," a pleasant young voice answered. "How may I help you?" "Mr. Graham, please," Ethan said coldly. "This is Ethan Black." "Ah, Mr. Black," the girl quickly said. "I'll connect you now." A few seconds later, Ethan was talking to the unsmiling man. The conversation was brief. Neither of them raised their voices, but the hostility did not go unnoticed. Finishing the call, Ethan took a deep breath. Looking at his phone, he saw his wife had already called him 5 times. Not yet, he thought, trying to calm down. Not yet. A sharp knock sounded on the conference room door. When Chloe opened it, she immediately recognized the 3 men standing before her. The first was a well-dressed older man named Mr. Hawthorne, the vice president and head of their branch. Behind him stood the imposing Mr. Graham, the head of Human Resources. Chloe couldn't help but notice that Mr. Graham's face was bright red, and she could have sworn she saw heat radiating from his face. Behind them stood Ms. Lewis, the office manager, and Scarlett and Chloe's boss. "Ms. Garnett, we need to speak with Ms. Black," Mr. Hawthorne said grimly. "Thank you for your help, but please return to your workstation." All three entered the room and Chloe left, carefully closing the door behind her. "Ms. Black, we have a problem," Mr. Hawthorne began. Scarlett hurried out to the parking lot, trying not to stumble. She tightly clutched the heavy paper envelope Mr. Graham had given her. Inside were photos, horrifying photos of her and Gavin Mitchell, the business manager from the third floor. Mr. Graham briefly recounted his conversation with Ethan. Ethan had threatened to make public the fact that the company was not adhering to the code of conduct. He told Mr. Graham he would discuss it with his soon-to-be ex-wife at home before deciding whether to take any legal action. Mr. Graham informed her that they would meet with Gavin next, but that she should go home and talk to her husband before things got out of hand. He also informed her that tomorrow, after her meeting with her husband, they would all sit down together and discuss her future at the company. Scarlett struggled to find her car because she was still crying heavily. The bright sunlight reflected off the vehicles, making them slightly harder to identify. However, her car was not too difficult to find. A large black Hyundai Santa Fe wasn't easy to hide. Scarlett climbed into the car, recalling the arguments that led to Ethan finally agreeing to lease a car for her. He had relented just before leaving for Afghanistan. She wiped her tears, put on her sunglasses, and drove home. The man in the old Chevrolet sedan, parked nearby, pressed a button on his phone. "Thanks, Bob," Ethan said calmly. "No, that's all. Please tell Ron that you guys did a great job and earned a bonus." "Thanks again. Goodbye." Looking at his laptop, Ethan sighed again. One more call, he thought. One more, and there'll be no turning back. But why should he go back? All that was left was an unfaithful wife who had ripped his heart out, and a broken marriage he could never restore. Ethan shook his head and pulled out his cell phone. He quickly dialed the number and waited. First ring, second ring, third ring, a soft click, and then silence. Ethan sat motionless, staring at the video feed on his laptop. Finally, after a few minutes, a tear rolled down his cheek. Scarlett pulled onto the highway in her large SUV and groaned. She had hoped to avoid rush hour. She punched the steering wheel. At this rate, she knew her usual 30-minute drive would take over an hour. She thought about her marriage, how unlikely it was that she could salvage anything. Ethan knew about her infidelity. Before Iraq, he might have forgiven her, but not now. The photos were taken while he was in Afghanistan. She sobbed, realizing what he must be thinking. Although the chances were slim, she had to try to save the marriage simply because she loved him. A funny way to show it, isn't it? She chided herself. She had been unfaithful more than once, but both times he had been overseas serving his country. She quickly shook her head, as if trying to ward off the guilt and shame, but tears flowed again. Trust was not something that came easily to Ethan. His childhood had been difficult. His father abandoned him and his mother when he was young, and his mother was an alcoholic. In their 5 years of marriage, Scarlett had seen his mother only twice. Once at their wedding, and once when their son was born. It had taken years for him to trust Scarlett. When they met in college, she knew he was a soldier. She thought she had accepted it. He had already served 2 years and was on his way to an engineering degree. They dated for a year before Ethan proposed. She still remembered her father's reaction. "No, Scarlett, this has nothing to do with Ethan," her father had said. "I think he'll be a wonderful husband. It's more about you. I don't think you'll make a good military wife. Don't be angry, dear, but it's hellishly difficult to be a good husband or wife when your spouse is deployed." Robert, Scarlett's father, had served in the Marines MP for 4 years. When Scarlett was a little girl, she still remembered the arguments that took place between her parents during that time. She always knew it was hard for him and her mother, and he didn't want that life for his little girl. "You were right, Dad," Scarlett sniffed and shook her head. "You were so right. I turned out to be a terrible soldier's wife. They bought a very nice starter home, and Ethan got a good job as an engineer. Life seemed so promising, and then Uncle Sam called. When Ethan learned of his deployment, she relentlessly berated him for abandoning her. To top it all off, when Ethan left for Iraq, she was already 4 months pregnant. Scarlett wiped her tears, pushing through the traffic. She remembered the loneliness she felt, continuing life without Ethan. Of course, her mom and dad did their best to help, but the sleepless nights alone eroded her. All that time, she needed Ethan to hold her, to hear his whisper that everything would be all right. But he wasn't there. She knew she was being selfish, but it didn't make the nights any less cold and lonely. Her mother, Eleanor, moved in with her for the last month before the baby was born, and that helped a bit. Scarlett and Eleanor had a very close relationship in most areas. Their personalities were so similar that they seemed more like best friends than mother and daughter. But there were things her mother simply wouldn't discuss. The details of her marriage while her husband served in the Marines were one of them. Whenever Scarlett tried to bring up the subject, her mother always became very distressed. Ethan returned home the day after Finn was born. For a moment, Scarlett thought they had become a real family, but it didn't last long. He left just 10 days later, and she was alone again. Her mother noticed some signs and pleaded with her not to give in to them. She kept talking about the damage one mistake could do to the lives of so many people. Of course, she didn't go into detail, but Scarlett suspected her father might have had an affair. They were always polite to each other, even friendly, but never passionate. Rather, they were friends living in the same house. Scarlett remembered struggling with depression and loneliness in the months after giving birth. Going back to work helped at first, and then she was assigned to a project with Gavin Mitchell. If Ethan had the rugged, attractive look of the guy next door, Gavin could have been a model. His soft baritone and charming smile made Scarlett's heart flutter every time he entered the room. He carried himself with such confidence and was so impressive. She knew he was married to an attractive, wealthy New York socialite. She and her children had only moved to the area a couple of years ago. Scarlett had even met his wife once at a party. She was beautiful, cosmetically speaking, and her personality was perfect for one of those housewife reality shows. But that only made Gavin more exciting. Just a month after they started working together, she succumbed to temptation. Succumbed, she wrinkled her nose. That's bullshit. I was flirting with him. A short 2-day business trip with the project team gave her the opportunity to turn that flirtation into a full-blown affair. They met a few more times, but she ended it just before Ethan returned home. After his return, Ethan changed. The carefree, country part of his nature seemed to have died. She knew his deployment had been difficult and that he had lost several close friends there. She even remembered his phone call the day after the worst happened. The Humvee in front of him hit an IED, killing 3 of his friends and crippling another. Ethan took it hard. Scarlett remembered letting him cry over the phone, as there was little she could say to comfort him. She even almost cried herself, telling him how much she loved and missed him. Mostly because she really felt that way, but partly out of shame for having been with Gavin only 5 days earlier. For the first few months after his return, she simply held Ethan in her arms, trying to bring the old him back. She had no doubt that she loved him, and her affair with Gavin had been just a moment of weakness. And then, just as things seemed to be getting back on track, came the order for his deployment to Afghanistan. She was crushed. It was no surprise that 2 months after he left, she was back in Gavin's arms. She knew there were no excuses, but eventually the loneliness and fear outweighed the guilt. She started pursuing Gavin again, and it took all her charms to win him back from the woman in the marketing department he had started seeing after their affair ended. She felt her face flush with shame for what she had done. Of course you're ashamed, but that didn't stop you, did it? Scarlett scolded herself. She tried to hold back the tears but couldn't, feeling the self-loathing pour out with every new tear. Gavin spent a few weekends at her house. He even managed to talk her into taking on another project. For a moment, Scarlett even considered leaving Ethan. Then came the sobering moment. She, Finn, and her parents drove to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to meet Ethan when he returned on leave. The drive there was tense, to say the least. Scarlett was sure her parents suspected something, but they hadn't said anything yet. And then she saw Ethan, and all her anxieties vanished. When he hugged and kissed her, she remembered why she had married him in the first place. They spent every hour reviving their marriage and strengthening their family. Scarlett smiled faintly, remembering that time. Ethan was so passionate, so tender, so incredibly loving that she swore to herself at that moment that she would be faithful to him for the rest of her life. And then Ethan told her he wouldn't be returning to the army, that he would be a civilian 4 months after returning from Afghanistan. She openly cried, knowing that they would soon be a real family again. When she returned from Fort Bragg, she severed all ties with Gavin, much to his disappointment and anger. She poured all her energy into preparing for Ethan's return. Scarlett even started seeing a doctor about her fears and loneliness. She was diagnosed with clinical depression and began counseling and medication. As the month passed, she felt herself getting stronger, both mentally and emotionally. Every day she swore to herself that she would make amends by being the best wife Ethan could ever hope for. Finally, when he returned a few months later, she kept her vows. She denied him nothing, neither her body, nor her attention, nor any part of her love. Although Chloe was right, things were different. When Ethan returned home this time, he was more guarded and less willing to open his heart. She simply thought it was because of what happened while he was overseas. Now she began to realize that he already knew about her infidelity, and that thought terrified her. Ethan stared grimly out the window, watching the light rain fall on those unlucky enough to be caught in it. He knew it would be a brief flash. The sun would shine again soon. Not yet, Ethan thought. Not yet. He watched the tiny dot on the laptop screen. It hadn't moved for a while, but now it was finally moving. His wife's SUV was stuck in traffic, but now it was inching forward. Taking a deep breath, he looked at his watch. It was time to call. Depending on what was said, this might be the last time he ever spoke to the woman he had deeply loved for the past 6 years of his life. Scarlett almost dropped the steering wheel when her cell phone rang. A quick glance showed it was him. She said a brief prayer, took a deep breath, and answered. "Ethan?" "Yes, it's me," he replied. "Honey, please," she said, trying to hold back a sob. "Please let me explain, tell you how sorry I am. Darling, Ethan." There was only silence. "Darling," she said, "are you still there?" "Yes, for now," he answered shortly. "Darling, where are you? Are you home with Finn?" "I don't have a home anymore, Scarlett," he said, and the pain flickered in his voice for only a second. "You took care of that. Where are you? It doesn't matter. I'm just waiting." "For me?" There was hope in her voice. "How you waited for me, darling?" Scarlett couldn't suppress the sobs rising in her throat. She had never before heard so much pain and anger in his voice, and certainly not directed at her. "Ethan, please, I have so much to tell you. I messed up so badly. I know I messed up, but I need to talk to you. I need to tell you so much. I love you, honey. Only you." Silence on the other end. "Fine, Scarlett, say what you want, but I doubt it will change anything. You slept with another guy while I was gone, not once, but many times. So what the hell do you think you can say to change anything?" "Please, Ethan, please, for us," she begged through her tears. "Don't leave until I see you. Please, honey, don't abandon us." "Abandon us," he hissed. "How you abandoned us?" "No," she cried into the phone. "I know what I did, but I never gave up on us. I was lonely and scared. I know that's no excuse, but it was. But I love you and I believe in us, darling. I really want to fix everything." "Are you serious?" he asked in surprise. Ethan hesitated, wondering if she really believed what she was saying. "You want to say you didn't abandon us? What about screaming his name when he was fing you again and again? Tell me, how the hell could you ever think that didn't mean abandoning us?" All she could do was cry, weaving through the traffic, trying to get to him as fast as possible. If only she could meet him face to face, then he would see her remorse, and then, perhaps, there would be hope. He continued bitterly. "I finally got proof that my wife was cheating on me while I was in Afghanistan. I guess we're both lucky. I think I would have killed you and that bastard if I had found out about it while I was in the States." After a few seconds, he sighed. "Amanda, this is our last conversation. If we get disconnected or one of us is put on hold, there will be no other conversation." "Ethan, please," she pleaded. "We can go to a counselor. We can get through this, honey. We really can." "Listen, there are a few things you need to know before you go home. First, I emptied all our accounts and maxed out all our credit cards. I think you cheated on me for the last 3 years, so I'm doing the same to you." He ignored her gasp. "You can keep the house, because I'm pretty sure I can still smell someone else in our bed. I packed everything I wanted. It all fit in one suitcase, so the rest is yours. You can keep your SUV, though I don't know how you'll pay for it, as I suspect you'll be fired tomorrow. I sent those photos to all your colleagues, family, all our friends, and even our church. I also posted them and a bunch of videos on several websites, along with all your information. I suspect you'll become very popular soon." "Oh, Ethan, no," Scarlett wailed. "Why? Why won't you wait until we talk?" "I waited, Scarlett," he said calmly. "I waited 4 months after I got back, and you didn't say anything. And you wouldn't have said anything if you hadn't been caught, would you?" "Darling, what could she say?" He was right. "As for your little plaything," Ethan sneered, "I almost paid him a visit, but after a few meetings with his wife, I don't think it will be necessary. How vengeful. You can warn Gavin. He better run. It seems his wife's family has interesting connections to some very questionable people. I'd be surprised if little Gavin lives a year without an accident. She'll probably come after his little sluts too. Oh wait, that includes you, doesn't it? Ethan, please, give me a chance to make things right." Scarlett's phone beeped. Looking at it, she recognized the number. "Ethan, it's Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor. I told you, if we get disconnected, we're done." There was a threat in his voice. Wincing, Scarlett quietly replied, Okay, honey, I was just worried something happened to Finn. Is Finn okay?" Ethan's voice softened. "He's with me now, and he's fast asleep." She breathed a sigh of relief. "By the way, Isabel Mitchell," he said quietly, "when the two of you went on your little business trip last week—" Scarlett's cell phone rang again, interrupting him. It was another neighbor calling. "Darling, it's Mrs. Watson. Are you sure Finn is okay?" "Yes, Finn and I are perfectly fine," Ethan said in such an eerie tone that Scarlett started to panic. He smirked. "Now, about Isabel Mitchell. She is something else. While you and that man were acting the way you should have been acting for the last 3 years, I spent 2 days getting to know his wife, closely." Scarlett gasped with the anger and pain of her husband's betrayal. Tears flowed again. "I wish I could tell you she's much better in bed than you, but the truth is, she's not," he stated. "Between her whining about what she wants and where, how, and when to do it, there's no time for pleasure. I'm sure Gavin would agree. So congratulations, Scarlett. You win the award. Best for sex." "Ethan, stop, please," Scarlett pleaded. "Please, just stop." She started to sob again. She hammered her fists on the steering wheel, screaming curses at the surrounding cars as they slowly crawled forward. Gradually, her composure returned, and she wiped away her tears of despair. "All right, Ethan," she sobbed. "You won. You got your revenge. You broke me." She was silent, waiting for his answer, but she only heard silence. "But I still love you, Ethan," she said quietly. "What I did can't be justified. I know that. But all I ask for is a chance to make things right. I'm begging you, please let me explain. There are some medical issues you need to know about. If you ever loved me, please meet me. Please, honey." "Medical issues," he sneered. "Postpartum depression, clinical depression, bipolar disorder, hell, even PTSD. In the end, it didn't matter." "Did it, Scarlett? You still went and slept with another guy. How did I find out? It really doesn't matter. As soon as I did, I hired people to follow you. They did a hell of a job, by the way, wiretapping phones and installing cameras all over our house, even in our bedroom." "Oh, Ethan," she exclaimed, "do you really hate me that much to do all this? Is there no love left in you?" "Well, there was," he quietly replied, "before I saw the video of you and him in our bed. Do you remember that time, Scarlett, when Finn walked in on you?" Scarlett gasped. "Oh God, no, please not again." Ethan's voice was strained. He was trying to contain his emotions. "Imagine how I felt, sitting there and watching my 2-year-old son call another man daddy. Everything I felt for you died right there, watching you tuck our son into bed with both of you. God damn you." Ethan's voice was shaking. "I guess I'm lucky I didn't know about it while we were at Fort Bragg. When I saw it, I was in shock. I almost lost myself in a place where you can't afford to lose yourself." Ethan looked at his laptop and saw that Scarlett was almost home. A cruel smile twisted his handsome face as he continued in a cold tone. "As for hurting you, Amanda, I haven't even started yet. I still have a little something left." He heard Scarlett gasp. Oh my God," she whispered. "Surprises," he finished. Scarlett pulled her SUV to the curb and watched in horror as flames engulfed what was once their home. "As I said, Amanda, the house and everything left in it is yours. Scarlett was trembling, still unable to believe her eyes. Damn it. Ethan, what have you done? That's a rhetorical question, isn't it? Ethan said with a smirk. I was trained to build in combat, Scarlett. Is it illogical? I know a thing or two about destruction, too. Where's Finn? She screamed. Damn it, Ethan, where the hell is my son? Our son is sitting 3 feet away from me, asleep in his car seat. So tell me, he mocked. Can you read the message I left on our front lawn? What? She mumbled. What message? Oh my God, Ethan smirked. I wasn't sure people could read it from the ground. But the news helicopters, they must love the writing burned into the lawn in front of the house. I wouldn't count on neighborly sympathy, he continued. I hung photos all over the neighborhood and paid a few teenagers to hand out extra copies block by block. He paused for a few seconds and listened to his wife sobbing. Scarlett, can you think, Ethan said bitterly, about where you'll sleep tonight and in the near future? I guess you could sleep in your SUV until they come for it. Or maybe not. I doubt Gavin can help. I'm sure Isabel is already skinning him alive. I guess only your parents are left. I wonder how your father will feel about having to... What? Scarlett mumbled, sobbing. Damn it, Scarlett, are you really that stupid? You always told me your father cheated on your mother when he served in the Marines. Damn it, your mother cheated on him? Mom? She asked in a trembling voice. Ethan laughed cruelly. Ah, damn it, yes. Your father told me a little about it after I came back from Iraq. Why do you think he did that, Scarlett? Do you think he suspected his little girl was cheating on her husband, just like her mum? But unlike your father, Ethan continued, I can't live with a slut wife for the rest of my life. Maybe he stayed for you, or maybe he still loved her. I don't know, that's his decision. My decision is to start over and hopefully find a woman I can spend the rest of my life with. I'm sure I'll find someone who can love me, be faithful, and be a good mother to Finn. Please, Ethan, Scarlett wailed, I can be that wife. Just give me one more chance to show you. And I'm already a good mother to Finn. I'm the only mother he needs. I guess the court will have to decide that, won't it? He said calmly. Of course, the fact that I burned down our house and virtually bankrupted us probably won't work in my favor. Ethan saw a young man in a t-shirt and baseball cap get out of a taxi and stop by the side of the road, looking his way. Ethan flashed his headlights twice, and the guy headed toward him. All right, Scarlett, Ethan said calmly, looking at his watch. There's one more thing you need to know, and time is running out, so listen very carefully. First, your bosses shouldn't worry too much about my threats. However, Isabel is filing a similar lawsuit and will probably win. I think the court will love both her and all the evidence I provided her. As for me, Ethan coughed. Well, I don't like my chances in court, so I've taken a job overseas. I think Finn and I will really like it there. No, Scarlett screamed into the phone. You can't take my child. Actually, he's my son, and I can. Don't, Ethan, please, she pleaded. He's my son, too. Amanda, he said calmly. In a few years, he won't even remember you. But don't worry, I'll send you pictures of him for Christmas and even call on Mother's Day and his birthday. Since we won't know where you'll be, we'll just call your parents. Scarlett cried bitterly, realizing the hopelessness of her situation. Ethan sat for a while, concerned and somewhat disturbed by his own actions. He knew he wouldn't send her photos or call her. The thought of her desperately waiting for calls that would never come and reliving this revenge for years was more cruel than he had previously thought. Goodbye, Bay, he said coldly. Go to hell. He wiped a tear from his cheek, listening to her hysterical screams, her pleas for her son, and hung up. Captain Black? The guy in the shirt asked, standing before him. Not anymore, Ethan smiled weakly. I'm just Ethan Black. Well, at least not for long. The young man grinned and handed him an envelope with numbers and passwords for offshore bank accounts, into which his funds had been transferred, minus some fees. Of course, here are the passports, photo ID, and plane tickets for Marcus Gray and his son Michael Gray, the teenager said, smiling. Ethan smiled even wider and began putting his old IDs and the 2 SIM cards from his cell phones into a small metal bucket. Smirking, he took a lighter and melted them into a small puddle of blackened plastic. Then he took a small hammer, smashed both phones, and threw the remnants into the bucket. Satisfied with his work, he tossed the bucket into a garbage can. That was better than I could have imagined, Ethan smirked. He quickly pulled out his car keys and handed them to the guy. Tell Grandma Iron thanks for the rental, he said quietly. Who? The young man asked with a wide smile on his face. My apologies, Ethan smirked. I must have made a mistake. A few minutes later, Ethan was checking in his luggage at the airport. He couldn't suppress a smile, thinking about what awaited him and his son in the next few weeks. His contract didn't start until next month, so they were going to spend a couple of weeks on a secluded beach with a nice lieutenant he had met in Afghanistan. They had just been friends then, but now that he had proof of his wife's infidelity, Ethan couldn't wait to find out if there was something more. Mr. Gray, the man at the check-in counter said politely, I wish you and your son a pleasant flight. Marcus Gray and his son walked through the lobby and began their new lives.